home. Back roads and boulevards, that's where I'll be. Back roads and boulevards, that's home to me. Back roads and boulevards, back road and boulevards. Welcome to another episode. Today, guess what this story is all about? My God, you don't have an ashtray. Share mine. Back in the day when I came to LA, my first movie that I was on, I sat next to Bette Davis for 3 days. And there's a lot of good stories about that movie because Jackie Cooper was the director, if you may know, from The Little Rascals, and he went on to be an amazing director. Great guy. Eileen Heckert, seasoned character actress. Lorene Tuttle, who later on was my acting teacher. She was in there. And anyways, all these people. And it was right down in downtown LA on 5th and Main, right in the Bowery. So where we were filming, they would have people from just drunk, wasted, druggy people just laying down and going to the bathroom on themselves. It was just nasty area, and we were there. And before I tell you about the movie story, we were there and we were having lunch, the whole cast one day. And don't mind that, that's my buddy. And we were having lunch one day in this big gated off area. And Betty and Jackie was there reading a script, and all they called them bums back then, all the bums from the Bowery started lining up around the fence. And they were looking, and these people from New York, they were really, the assistant producers and all the people from New York, they were kind of just edgy, nasty people. And one of them got up and said, "Mr. Cooper, what are we going to do about these bums watching us eat?" And Jackie takes off his glasses and he looks. And let him in. Let him eat. He says, "What? Let him in." So he let them all in. And all these guys were, all these guys just came in and ate. And back then they had lavish meals that they served. And so they would eat and we would eat, and then we went on the set. Well, that first day, like I said, Mr. Cooper looked at me and said, "Go in that room over there, and we'll be right in." And I went in there, and back then I smoked, so I lit up a smoke, and I was kind of daydreaming, and that's when I heard, "My God, you don't have an ashtray, share mine." I looked, and it was Betty. And I sat next to Betty for 3 days. We talked. She was eccentric, very nice to me. But man, some of the stories that when we worked there, so she would go on the set and she had an assistant. And they would call, "Betty, we're ready for you." And she'd get up and she'd have her cigarette. And before she went on and did a scene, she gave that cigarette to her assistant and stormed on. And when she got done with that scene, immediately she got up and that assistant had a cigarette lit for her. And she'd grab it like that. And then we'd go sit down. And then she would say things like, "Dear, these assistant producers from New York don't have a clue what they're doing, do they? Oh my God." And so I would just listen. I wouldn't say anything because I was sitting there with a megastar. And then I'll remember one day she was doing a scene, and this sound girl starts going, and Betty goes, "Cut, sneeze." And this girl goes, "Achoo!" And she sneezes. And everybody, like, wow, she says, "My dear, I don't care if you're working for the biggest director in Hollywood. Don't ever hold a sneeze for somebody. You can hurt yourself." And, and I thought, wow, that's pretty classy, you know. And then one day after work, we had LAPD motorcycle cops that would be with us down there, protecting us. And one day after we got done shooting, the police went home, the Bowery turned back to what it was, and Betty's assistant came up from one of the trailers all by herself, and she looked scared to death. And I just walked up and said, "Hey, it's me, Kim. I'm working on the set with you. Would you like me to walk you back to your trailer?" And she said, "Oh, would you?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I walked her back, and she turned to me and she said, "Oh, if I can never do anything for you, please let me know. Thank you so much." So I said, "Well," I said, "I know Betty doesn't give pictures out, but I'd love to have one." And so the next morning I came in and there was a picture from Betty, and which you'll see on this thing. We'll have it pop up there. But it was interesting. The backstory to that was, I didn't know till years later, after Betty died, she didn't leave anything to her family. She left everything to that girl. And that girl, that lady now, I feel like calling her and say, "Hey, remember me? You said anything I would like." She left everything to that lady. And I thought it was just fascinating that would happen. Other things that happened on that movie, were in a fight scene, and I remember it was a big boxing ring, and Hollywood wouldn't use real smoke; they would use beeswax, and so they'd pump this beeswax in. And I was like betting. They said I was supposed to be a pimp. I had on a black velvet jacket, and I was betting, and smoking cigarettes, and it was just a great movie. It was called White Mama, and another story of that is Lorene Tuttle, who was a character actress on there, became my acting teacher. My manager that I talked about in the first episode, he was a American Indian, but he got me to go to her. And Lorene's daughter was married to John Williams, the famous composer, did Star Wars and all these things. And his kids would come over. Well, she was my teacher, and we got to be good friends. And then every Christmas Eve, probably like 3 years in a row, because I was by myself, she would invite people that didn't have any place to go, and so I would come over, and John Williams' kids would be there, Judy Garland's son, and I found out years later Helen Hunt was in my class. I just didn't recognize her because she was younger then. And when she got up with her Academy Award and said, "I want to thank Lorene Tuttle, my acting teacher," I go, "Oh my gosh, I was in acting class with her." And one of my other friends in my class, he worked for the Dodgers. And so he would take Lorene and I up to Dodger Stadium, and we'd go to the club and eat, and then go down and have seats second row behind home plate, Dodger Stadium. It was just amazing, great times. And but that movie, getting back to the movie White Mama, another amazing thing that happened on that movie was there was a guy, he was a big black guy with a big cigar. He was heavy. His name was Fats. And he was actually on, some of you might recall the show Beretta. And he was an enforcer in Beretta. Well, the reason he was in that movie is because he actually was an enforcer down there, right down in LA. He would walk around with his entourage and collect money from people. And one day, we were missing a bunch of stuff, and Jackie, that's how he got the job on this movie. He was missing some stuff, and he came up, and Jackie said, "We're missing everything." And he says, "Well, what do you need?" He says, "I want things back." Well, that night they brought back things that we didn't even see before. And then part of the deal was, I guess, he would hire Fats to be in the movie, and he would be the enforcer around there and take care of all our stuff. So anyways, that's my big story about working with Bette Davis. I probably have some other things that are interesting about it, but I can't recall right now. So I'm going to move on to my friend. After singing at Disney at night, I would I would stop in North Hollywood at Beverly Garland's hotel. And Beverly Garland was a famous actress, and she bought this hotel. It was like a Holiday Inn right up on Tujunga. And so I would stop in it, and you'd never know who you would meet in there. One night, so my friend Jordan Charney, who was actually a big character actor, he was the dean in Ghostbusters, Mr. Micheliti in Three's Company. Anyways, really recognizable, but we became friends, and I would meet him almost every night up there and have a drink. And one night he said to me, "Kim, have you ever met Steve Cropper?" I said, no. And he said, Steve Cropper wrote Sitting on the Dock of the Bay with Otis Redding. I said, wow, that's amazing. So I got to talk to Steve, and I said, how did you write that song? I mean, that's like a world famous song. He said, I was at the right place at the right time. Otis had already written part of that song and said to me, hey man, and he was like stoned out of his gourd and said, hey man, I need some help finishing this song. And so I helped him finish it, and he says, frankly, I don't even feel like I did that much, but I'll tell you one thing, Kim, because of that song, I'll never have to work a day of my life. That song is just recorded so many times. And I met other people at Beverly Garland's too, you know, Snuff Garrett, Dottie West, and Mickey Gilley, and all these people. Sometimes a lot of people that did concerts up in Universal, they would stay there because it was kind of out of the way, and they didn't have to mess with the tourists. So it was kind of cool. And then there's my time with, hey sucker, hey sucker. When I worked for Showtime Networks, my boss would have us. I worked with a magician named Jason Randall. He was on David Letterman and all this stuff, and he would do magic and I would do music. Well, they would hire people like Playboy bunnies. I dated one of them once because she came to Nashville, but we were in Atlanta, and Mr. T. They hired Mr. T. And so we came up in the suite. We were having lunch with my boss, me, the magician I worked with, and Mr. T, just the four of us. And we were just sitting there. He was just a normal guy, just a fun guy, you know, just bigger than life. And David, my boss, said, okay, the CEOs from Showtime Networks are going to come in. They want to meet Mr. T. And so he goes, oh, a big deal, huh? So they walk in. He goes, oh, Mr. T. He looks at him. He says, where's the chains? He says, the chains? You don't pay me enough, sucker. You pay me more money, I'll bring the chains. And the guy looks at him like, whoa. That's exactly what he said to him. I'll bring the chains. So that was like a little brush with, you know, everyone. Some of these stories are just brushes with people. That reminds me even more recently that I'm getting off track, but a little sideways here, a little brush with greatness. I was at the Disneyland Hotel at the Napa Rose having some food and drinks. It's a couple years ago now. You'll know why. And I'm going out the door, and bam, the door just hits me. And I look up, and this man says, oh, I'm sorry, man, are you all right? And it was Kobe Bryant. And I said, yeah. I said, you're Kobe. And he said, yeah, I'm Kobe. He said, you okay? I said, yeah. So I went on my way. He was really nice. But getting back to the Showtime Networks and the movies, Mr. T, Playboy bunnies, some of those trade shows, there was all kinds of magicians on the floor. I just got to travel all over the United States, you know, Atlantic City, Nashville, Vegas, Anaheim, Lake of the Ozarks. We got to go eat on these plantations down south places I never would have got to see if I was just, you know, doing normal stuff. And it was quite amazing, actually. So I had another story I wanted to tell you. Oh, I know I'm kind of rambling around, but when I first came to town, started singing down in Redondo Beach and up in Arcadia at the 100-to-1 Club. It was a little dive bar, and people from the most poor track bum to billionaires would go in this place, 100-to-1 Club. And just met all the jockeys and a lot of, you know, really wealthy people, nice people, track people. And this girl came in one night, and she was really pretty, and she said, oh, I sang. And so I had a trio up there at the time, and I said, well, come on up and sing. And she sang, and her name was Lisa. I won't tell you her last name because, you know, she was an Italian girl, and she was beautiful. So we started hanging out together, and then she invited me over to her place after we had drinks one night, and I went over, and we go in, and there's like 25 telephones, you know, phones on, not cell phones, telephones on the floor. And I said, well, what's this? She says, I started the first phone sex business up here. I go, wow. I mean, I never even heard of that, you know. And then one day somebody came to her and said, Lisa, this business is too big for you, and we're going to buy it from you. So she sold it. Well, later on from that, we kept in touch and sang, and I got a call from her one day and said, hey, there's a concert at Magic Mountain. I'd like you and your buddies to come up. And it was Rupert Holmes who wrote the song and performed the song Pina Colada. And she said, yeah, I'm the girl in the song. And I guess the story was somebody put an ad in a like a newspaper or one of the local play things, and answered it, do you like pina coladas and walking in the rain? And she said yes, and she met up with him, and it was Rupert Holmes, and he wrote that song, do you like pina coladas? So interesting story, but that's all for today. Back Road Boulevards. I hope to see you soon.
Subscribe.
Oh, like and subscribe, and please make a comment. I'd love to hear from you.